So maybe you've thought about trying modeling. Maybe you've had a practice amp and you kind of want to step up and see what the world of modeling has to offer. And you've seen the Line 6 Helix, or the Axe-Fx, or the Neural DSP, or the Head Rush unit, or some of Boss's offerings for modeling. Or perhaps you've seen the Boss Core or the HX Stomp, which have most of the features but are still a few $100s. What if I told you that you could get into modeling for dirt cheap? Today I'm going to be talking about this. This is the Line 6 Pod. It came out over 20 years ago, in 1999, I believe. It's kind of the grandfather to all of those units that I just mentioned. And this was Line 6's first foray into modeling. And at the time, it was somewhat revolutionary. Now, I'm sure you've seen videos online where people scoff at these and say, oh, they just don't sound good, or you can't do things with them. But if you're looking for something to experiment with and you don't have a lot of cash, this can be a viable alternative. So you can pick these up used on Reverb. They also make newer versions that are smaller. They have what's called the Pocket Pod XT, I believe, which is nowhere near as expensive as some of the newer units. Is it going to sound as good as the new stuff? Probably not, but if you go and take a look at Josh Scott's video that he did recently, he beat me to the punch doing a video about these. He showed that with a little bit of tweaking, you can get some workable sounds. So I'm going to do a run through of this and tell you some of the pros, some of the cons, a couple of things that he didn't show you, such as you can get an external pedal for this and use it live. And I'll kind of give you some demo, some playing examples, and we'll finish up with my thoughts on it. Okay, so I've got the pod hooked up to my interface here. I'm running into a Focusrite interface. When you hook it up, there are 1/4 inch jacks on the backside here to hook up, but they're actually tip ring sleeve. So you can run it with an adapter that goes from this style connector to a microphone connector. So if you're playing with a small PA and you want to run this right into the PA, you can. It also has a connection on the back for the pedal. There's also a switch for direct or air. Basically what that does is give you a little bit of cabinet emulation. If you were going to run this into the front of an amplifier, obviously you wouldn't necessarily need that, but I've got it switched on because I'm running into my DAW directly. Okay, so I've got my Stratocaster running into the pod, and I've also got a camera so that you'll be able to see when I make adjustments to it. Now, this, I actually still use it when I'm teaching, sometimes when I have students at the house, because it's easier than lugging another amplifier from where I do these videos and record to where I actually teach. So I've got a sound that's already called up, and this is basically it's a preset. So when you have presets, what you see on the settings don't necessarily coincide with it. What will happen is as you turn the knobs, it will then kind of catch up to where it's actually set on the device. Now there is a way to edit this with your computer. There is some software that you can download from Line 6, and what you'll need is a USB to MIDI adapter, because this does not connect directly to the computer. It still has to go through MIDI, but you can do adjustments with some of the software that they have. Personally, I just like turning the knobs and tweak. I just find a sound that I kind of like to start with, and then I kind of go from there. But this is the sound I have called up now. It's kind of a reminiscent of maybe a Fender Blackface. Fairly clean, because when I'm teaching guitar, I don't necessarily want a lot of distortion on the guitar. So it's easy to make mistakes when you set this up. What you have to realize is distortion on digital equipment is terrible. It does not sound, it's not like analog equipment where you can kind of max out the volume and you get a desired effect from it. So when you're actually recording or running anything into anything digital, you never want it to get into the red. You always want it kind of a few dB below max so that you don't run the risk of clipping, because when you do, it will sound more like this. And that's just, you know, not good at all. So I back the output level down a little bit, and now you can kind of hear. Now, years ago, I actually used this as a spare. I've talked in some of my other videos about if you're going to play out somewhere, make sure you've got backups of your equipment. And this is something that's easy to throw in your bag, and you can, you know, harvest or salvage a gig with it. Now, a few things I have noticed over the years, like with my Marshall amp, it does not sound good at all with the Marshall amp. Whether you're running in front of it, whether you're running in the loop and just using it for effects, it's really not, it's just the way the amp and the effects kind of interact together, it just doesn't sound good. But using it directly into a computer, you know, I can get some decent sounds out of it. So let me kind of go down to some of the more preset sounds that are in here. You can kind of get an idea of some of the different sounds. Now, of course, the guitar that you're going to be using is going to make a big difference, because this being all single coil, it's going to have more single coil sounds. So some of the patches in here may not sound great on this guitar. Let's see here. So there's one that's somewhat usable, but the bass is too loud. So I can come over here and adjust the bass. Or bring down the mids. Now you could also adjust like the type of amp that you're using. So you know, these are kind of named based off of what they're supposed to represent. I think the modern is maybe a Wagner supposedly sound. And you can adjust the cabinets that the simulation has by holding the tap down, and you can change and go for different amp combinations. And of course you can back the drive down. Maybe throw in a little reverb. Maybe we can do, let's do some tremolo. course, if you hit the manual button, then everything lines up here. So I can go through and try the different sounds. And there's more than just these amp models. You really need the, you can download a PDF of the instructional manual, and things will make a lot more sense when you have that. They call it the pilot, I believe. But again, I can go in and I have a different set of amps. When I hit this hold button, it brings up the secondary menus. So if I want to change the cabs again, let's go to maybe something like a 2x12. And then the manual will tell you whether it's supposed to be open back, close back, that kind of thing. Now also with the hold button, when you hit that, these knobs also change from doing bass, middle, treble, over to adjusting effects, like if you're using delay, what the time is on the delay, how many repeats, that kind of stuff. As with all modelers, when you're trying to do sounds, remember that less is more. Sometimes you need less drive and distortion than what you actually think you need. So here, I've got quite a bit of breakup going on, but it still somewhat is somewhat responsive. Now, is this going to stack up to the newest version that Line 6 has, which is the Helix or the Pod Go? Absolutely not. Those units sound way, way better than this unit does, but that doesn't mean that this can't be useful in specific instances. So I use it again for teaching just because it's convenient. It's good as a backup unit. It can save a gig if your main unit or whatever you're using goes down. Don't expect it to sound exactly like the devices that it's supposed to be modeling. If it says a Fender Blackface, it's not going to be exactly the same. You can get it close or close enough, and that's what you really have to ask yourself is these tones that you're getting, can you use them? Can you get by with them? Yeah, I mean, you can. It just takes a little bit of tweaking. Most people agree that the default settings that come on a lot of these devices actually are okay, especially if you're trying to do serious metal. You're going to want to go in and tweak them for your guitar, for the setup that you're using. It's going to take some programming to get it done. But that's also the same thing with the newest Line 6 stuff that's out there, or any of the other devices that are there. You're going to have to tweak it from the preset sounds to get it to what you like and what you respond to. One of the issues that you have with all modelers, the Pod included, is that when you change patches, a lot of times there's a big jump in sound. So I have another modeler that's the GT8 that Boss put out in the mid-aughts, or whatever you want to call 2005, 6, 7, 8. And you can see a big jump in volume when you go between one patch or another. So if you're going to be using something like that live, or even the latest Line 6 stuff, you're going to want to go in and make sure that you change the patches and figure out if you need to tweak the overall volume, because sometimes it can be a big jump in volume between maybe a clean or a crunch kind of sound to a full lead sound. It may be too much of a jump from one to the next. If you like this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post new content.